Okay, minutes. At what? 56. 0.3. Because we're now behind. Oh, baby. Kent. Did you or Mary get back with George Marlin about sales tax figures? I thought you would, so thanks.
Yeah. I'll confirm with Mary because I'd sent it to Mary so she could have a more complete explanation to George, and I'll just confirm that with her.
Okay. Okay. Hi, Mary. That's my umbrella. Oh my goodness. Okay. Is this service? Where is everybody?
Getting close.
Dawn Janov has a question, so I'm promoting her to panelist so she can say her question. Dawn, can you hear us?
Mute. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to say hello, I'm here and I'm anxious for this to start. That's all. 'Cause you said nobody was
Okay.
here. I've been waiting. Off now. Roger and out, right?
Yeah.
Good to hear your voice,
Are
Dawn.
you gonna want?
Pardon?
Are you gonna want to speak during public comment or anything like that?
No, I don't. I just am curious and happy to be part of the community. You guys are doing a
Okay.
great job, so I have nothing to say. I just enjoy listening to you. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Dawn.
Yep.
So you'll know if you're doing. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Cool.
You're good to go.
One of these days I'll get used to this.
I think you're doing fine.
I kind of like it here at the Schnitzer. I think I'll just stay.
And there's Rob.
Keith,
Yep,
how's it going?
just perfectly.
Awesome. Hi, Lynette.
Hello there. How's everybody this evening? Good.
And breasted and ready.
Hey, we have a quorum, so we could start right on time.
Perfect.
Oh, you're not the Rob I thought you were.
Hi, the Keith you thought.
What was up with that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm trying to help Rob, but he's having, I think a problem getting on, but he's trying.
Okay. Is Jerry trying to get on too?
I don't see him yet, but I'm watching. Yeah.
Okay.
I just texted him. He texted back that he was connecting now, so.
We'll wait for him. And for Rob. I did see Tim's message that he won't be able to join us tonight.
Rob's been replaced by a cat.
Quite a handsome cat.
A lot more hair than Rob. Probably smarter.
Yes, that'll be the comment that makes me unmute.
Figured.
And Jerry will be with us in seconds.
Okay, very good. Hi, Jerry.
Howdy.
Okay. So now that we have everybody from the board that is able to attend tonight and our town attorney, I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Selectmen of the town of Georgetown to order. It is August 11th, 2020, and it is 6:03 p.m. And would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Kent's got a flag going. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
United
States
States of America and to the republic
for which it
which
stands,
stands
one
one nation, under
under
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and
justice for
justice for all.
Okay. I will call the roll. I am Police Judge Lynette Kelsey. Rob Connell,
Here.
Keith Holmes,
Here.
John Jennings,
Here.
Paul Hengen,
Here.
and Mary Smith.
Sure.
Wonderful. Thank you. Agenda approval. Does anybody have anything to add to or delete from the agenda? I would like to delete the findings and discussion decision for the STR appeal. Jerry actually meant for that just to be part of the record and just to have me sign it, not to really discuss it, if that's okay with everybody.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything to add? Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
And moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor, say aye.
I
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Audience business. Members of the audience have 5 minutes to present any matter of interest not already on the agenda. Is there anybody out in our audience that would like to make a comment? Do you know, Jennifer?
I have not heard of anybody. Tom Elliott was going to do something, but I don't see him here now. So I'm thinking no. If anyone wants to speak, that's an attendee, if you want to just type into the chat. But other
Who's
than that, I don't
Dawn?
have anything.
Who's Dawn?
Dawn Janov. Dawn Janov.
She lives in Ward 3. She's just attending.
Okay.
We'll give them a moment.
Tom was going to speak on an agenda item anyway, not on a,
Oh, okay,
so.
okay. So it would appear we don't have anyone here for audience business, so moving on. We have the payables. What Mary's presenting us with are the payables from July 24th through August 6th, 2020. Did anybody have any questions or comments about any of those payables?
I see we spent $91,000 on light poles. That was a budgeted item, wasn't it?
You're muted.
We asked specific approval from the board for those light poles. Those were the additional light poles for Gateway Segment 2.
And is that the final payout on that?
On the light poles, yes. Although they need to get us our little crossbars for the ones in between, but for the light poles to Sturgeon, yes. We still have a payment or two to, I'm doing a final walkthrough with, they're called Elite SI now instead of PLM, tomorrow morning, so. Along with Craig Abrahamson and Cindy, project managers for the project. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Is there merit to continuing on with Safe Build?
That's a larger discussion, probably for another time. So, but duly noted.
Unless we would have someone to replace them immediately, it would be awful difficult to.
Right now, they're set up to take a percentage of the permit fees that they collect.
Yeah.
So,
If we were to choose to change that, is that contract, could that be canceled with notice? So if we had that larger discussion later?
it's come up before, and I believe Jerry can bring that, maybe our next meeting, we could talk about it if you'd like.
Sure. I reviewed it before. I don't quite remember the details now, but knowing it's important to the board, I'll pull that file and my comments on it and be ready for next meeting.
Okay. If there aren't any other questions or comments on the payables, I would entertain a motion to approve the payables as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the payables from 7/24/2020 to 8/6/2020.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded to approve the payables from 7/24 to 8/6/2020 as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And next we have 3 sets of minutes. We had 2 special meetings, one on the 7th of July and another one on the 5th of August, and a regular meeting on the 28th of July. Let's maybe do that one at a time and start with the earliest one. Anybody have any comments or questions on that July 7th special meeting? Hearing no comments or questions, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting of July 7th, 2020 as presented?
I'll make a motion. I just didn't want to step on anybody.
Go ahead.
And to approve the the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Wonderful. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the special meeting of the Board of Selectmen of July 7th, 2020, as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we'll move on to the other special meeting, which was of August 5th, 2020. Are there any comments, questions, or corrections? I did send it's on page 1, the second to the last paragraph, under our discussion of the redistribution of the census contribution to the county. There were a couple of names that needed correcting. Ula Karen Johnson's and Alyssa, I think it's Denberg, but I did send those corrections and correct spellings to Jen so she could put them in there.
Can
make a
whoever's
motion
doing
to
their
ap-
dishes turn their mic off?
It's not me. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from the special meeting on August 5th, 2020.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the August 5th, 2020 special meeting. I presume is corrected. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 I abstain because I wasn't there.
Technically, you don't have to abstain.
I read through the meeting and I agree with it, so I'm fine with it.
If you wish to vote, you can. You're not
I'll vote.
required to have been there in
I'll vote.
order to.
Yeah.
So, any
Aye.
opposed?
So can I interrupt?
Yes.
So Norma just called me and wanted me to let you know that Tom Elliott would like to speak.
Okay. Well, let's finish what we're on.
Okay,
Okay. Any opposed? Motion passes then. Okay. And then we have the minutes of the regular meeting of July 28th, 2020. Any comments, corrections? I did have a couple, and I don't think I gave these to, I may not have given all of them to Jennifer. In our special meeting minutes from July 7th, no, never mind that. Jen, were you able to check the recording? Is the statement that Shane Henry is a property manager, is that a correct statement?
No, that was a mistake. And yes, he is a professional real estate broker.
Okay. Okay. And I felt it was, I realized that his testimony paragraph states that the full letter is on file, but I felt because of what was being discussed, it was important to include when he purchased the home, which was in April of 2020.
Yes, that was right.
Okay. And then on page 5, in the emergency ordinance number 2, 3rd paragraph, the last sentence, it should say they instead of he.
Okay, got it.
Okay. And then in Mary Smith's motion under resolution 7, does anybody, Mary specifically, do you have an objection? I don't know if Jen's listing of how the motion was made was verbatim, but do you have an objection to having the section that from and reevaluate at the September 8th, 2020 Board of Selectmen meeting moved to after the 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 7? It just reads better.
Yeah, that's fine. We can clear up the verbiage.
Okay, thank you. And that was all I had.
I think then on page 6 for the first paragraph.
Okay.
Shouldn't it include the language of the ordinance in the motion? Because otherwise it's rather vague. Selectman Jennings made a motion with an endpoint of the Clear Creek channel. It seems like there's a
Oh,
piece
you're right. It does.
missing unless you actually read through the ordinance.
Yeah, we can insert the title of the ordinance in there.
Okay.
Jen, you've got that.
Okay, yes, I will do that.
Cool.
Okay. Anything else? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the July 28th, 2020 meeting as amended?
I'll make the motion.
Second,
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the July 28, 2020 meeting as amended. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. So is Tom Elliott in the audience, and are you able to promote him so we can figure out whether he wants to speak on a agenda item, or was he wanting to be under audience?
So I don't see him as an attendee. Tom, are you in the meeting?
they can see us. He can see us, but he's not in. So I think he's going to.
Okay.
Okay. Dawn Janoff, could you please mute yourself? We're getting some feedback from wherever you are. Thank you.
Tom's gonna text Kent and find out how to get on.
Okay. All right. So next on the agenda, we have ordinance number 3, series 2020. And this is a second reading and public hearing. Why don't I go ahead and open the public hearing, and we can hear from staff first and then take public comment.
Terrific. I'm the staff report. If I missed something, Kent, help me out. But you saw this ordinance on first reading that the town has had for some time an entire title. It's a very short title of the municipal code entitled Clear Creek Channel, and that present regulations in that channel largely regulate the behavior of people who through whom the channel passes in town. And there's a duty to repair the channel as it goes through your property, etc. So it's mostly focused on persons who are living and owning property along the channel. It does have a very short chapter, subsection on use regulations prohibiting the bathing and washing in the channel and authorizing the town administrator to post warning notices. So that's, I just want to make sure you knew the structure of the code provisions that this ordinance adds a section to. And so the section that's being added is under the use restrictions, not under the rules for property owners, for lack of a better way of saying it. And so the use restrictions right now are pretty old, I think, in terms of their original adoption. Looks like 1958, but probably earlier than that. It was probably a recodification of 58. You can't bathe or wash utensils or leave refuse, garbage, etc. in Clear Creek Channel. So this ordinance adds a new section that prohibits swimming, kayaking, boating, tubing in the channel or its forks above the endpoint that was mentioned and placed in the ordinance as of the last meeting. I think we've got that endpoint correctly in your packet. If I'm right, it's the where the creek enters Georgetown Lake at the pedestrian bridge, directly west of Wolverine Circle, adjacent to the apartment building at 1920 Argentine. So it's a pretty short section, and happy to answer any further questions. Obviously, mostly relevant during high water, but even so, there's some pretty low bridges, and any kind of tubing would be a dangerous activity to engage in really at any time of year on the creek. So questions or Kent, anything else?
Okay.
I have one thing. May I ask a question? Jerry, you've identified an endpoint. Should there be a beginning point?
Well, the beginning point presently would be the territorial boundaries of the town. So wherever the creek enters the town on the south as it's flowing north,
And there's two.
That's right, yeah, there are two forks.
Two channels.
So the town boundary would be the starting point as written now, unless you want to change that to somewhere within the town.
No, I was actually saying, I mean, if I was just worried that people would be able to put in, at the very top of the flow and then ride the channel through town.
Well, you could put in out in the county where the town doesn't have any jurisdiction, but the minute you float it down and hit the town boundary,
Right.
it's ordinance that apply to you.
Got it.
Yep.
Should there be signage to that effect if somebody does something like that?
The code presently authorizes the town administrator to do that. There's a code section in this little use regulations that I've actually renumbered. Right now it's 20. And I thought it'd be better for it to be the last one in this series. So you'll notice the ordinance renumbers it. But that section, and I can tell you what it says, is the town administrator is authorized and directed to post such signs and warnings as he or she deems necessary to enforce the provisions of this chapter. However, the absence of a sign is not a defense to prosecution for violation of the chapter. That's what.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, good question. So I would like to take comments from the public. It looked like we had somebody who wanted to speak. Parker Scott.
Okay, let me promote him. Just take a sec. There he is.
Hi
Can
there.
we ride turtles down the creek? I like that, sea turtles. Would that be permissible?
So you have the whole Scott family. I'm Justin.
I'm
My
Leisha.
Our son Parker and our daughter Addison. And
I see.
we kind of brought this whole thing to life, I think.
Oh, okay.
So I think we are kind of Yeah, kind of upset. I mean, they've been doing this for 2 months, 3 months, tubing down the river. And
I wouldn't say upset because there's a rule or ordinance out there. Rather, the case in which it was handled, wording used towards the children, and then, it's kind of open-ended. So, why limit who's on the river? Like fishermen can be, but whoever, right now it's the children and their tubes can't be. So we've taught the children to speak up and ask questions and make sure we're following the rules. Like we want to follow the rules, but we didn't find anything when we had searched. So I think that's kind of where it all came to fruition.
And so we get the safety thing, and I think Kent's original thing was, they're not wearing helmets. They did have their life preservers on, and Kent, we thought that was a great point. So if you've seen them, they now have helmets. We want to be safe, but I don't know. It seems like you're restricting this to the tubers, but rock climbers can rock climb, bicyclists can bicycle. We ride up to the train station every night, and cars fly by us. I think that's just as dangerous as tubing down the river. When you were young, you probably didn't have the town telling you couldn't do outdoor activities wherever you grew up.
I think that's kind of what draws us to the mountain.
Yeah, I think we live in Denver also, but I think every week we spend more time up here just because it's so relaxed. It's not like city with everybody telling you what you can and can't do. And it's small town, I guess. And I think it's taking away from the small town. And if you wanted to restrict it so commercial companies aren't coming and renting 100 tubes a day and people floating down your river, or if we need to buy a permit, a fishing permit to help with fees if rescues had to happen, I think all of that would be a fair thing. But just to close it down to tubing altogether, I think is I hate the word fair, but unfair.
Do you want to say anything? You could say.
Go ahead.
Any other comments? I mean, this isn't like the end. You can jump back in. So, okay. All right, very good. Anyone else in our audience that would like to speak?
I'm not showing any. I don't know.
Looks like Kim Murtha.
Yeah, there's like Kim Moth and Sophia would like to speak.
Yeah, there's a chat open asking for that.
Yeah.
Oh, I okay. All righty, let's get Kim on then. Here she comes.
Come on down.
Okay, Kim, if you just unmute yourself, then we'll be able to hear you.
That always helps. So.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
I think I was being an expert. Anyway, I have my daughter here and we're kind of with the Scotts. We have a place up there, and during COVID, this is something that we tried to keep our kids active and be out in the community. And, I do see fishermen, like the Scotts said, we try to be respectful and follow the rules, but this is just something that I think I have seen people in the community kind of happy about it, and made people come out and wave at them, and good community spirit. I don't know, Sophia, do you want to say anything? Oh, okay.
But welcome to if you'd like to.
Okay. But I just think it's an opportunity, like the Scott said, we're outdoors people. I mean, they've been on the lake, they've paddleboard, and we try to be respectful and follow all the rules. And I just think we want to just support the group and my kids were part of the ones in the tubes too. And we're very safe and wear what was required. And we're just trying to be part of the community. So.
Okay. Appreciate that. All right. Anyone
okay, so Sophia, oh, that was Kim's daughter. Okay. There's a new person, Brad. I don't know if he wants to speak. He's not typing in the chat that he does. And Tom is on, but we can get to him when we get to the other agenda item. He wants to talk about that one. So.
Oh, okay. So he had a specific agenda item he wanted to
Yeah.
talk about, and it's not this. Okay.
Right.
All right. Does anybody from the board have questions for either the Scott family or the Moth family?
I don't have questions, but at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a statement.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Kent.
I guess I'd ask the Scott family and Sophia, what's the most southern point where you've dropped in? Because I view the creeks a lot more narrow and a lot more difficult. South of a certain point. Probably the 11th Street Bridge at a minimum, and maybe the 15th Street Bridge, but ask where you've put in.
The highest point we've entered in is the Conoco gas station. Right across from that, there's like a plain dirt area, and we just enter in from there.
Okay, right next to Georgetown Market then.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
On Rose Street.
on Rose, okay.
There's a Georgetown owned lot there. I looked on the map, and it's a real easy entry into the river right there.
So about 13th
Probably.
or so was where it would end up, maybe. Yeah.
And you're right, it is narrow and the low bridges and, not real hospitable for water sports. I don't think anything much farther than that.
Okay. And what about you, Sophia or Kim?
We get in at the same spot as them. We go tubing as groups together, so.
Okay. And they had mentioned that they were wearing life preservers and helmets. Is that something that you also do?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yes.
So you guys had asked about Brad Andrews. So he's watching, and his children were also tubing with our two families.
Okay.
They purchased the former tea house up in town. So they're part of town now as well.
But he's driving, so he can't be part of the conversation.
Oh, okay. All right. Appreciate that. Okay.
So I have a question for both of them. If you are putting in at that point, do you go underneath any bridges or anything before you hit the lagoon other than that last bridge?
We go underneath the 15th Street Bridge, but we probably have 5 feet above us still before we would even reach hitting it. But besides that, we don't go under any bridges.
And
all right, thank you.
Do you exit at Dexter? What is the street? They exit at Scepter Circle, give or take.
Okay. So right around that Greenway.
Exactly.
Greenway Park.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I think our main concerns, in drafting this ordinance was that in very many parts that are actually further south than where you've been putting in, the creek's quite narrow. It's surrounded on both sides by mostly private property, which makes rescues very difficult. And so we're trying to address the safety concerns. Do you have any further comments before I close the public comment period?
I just wonder why rescue on private property by the river would be different than a rescue, like if my neighbor's house were to be on fire or somebody needed help. I don't suppose the rescue team would have any issues using my property to save anybody. I mean, and I don't see anybody would have a problem with their property being used to save somebody.
Okay.
So,
No, because
I mean,
they're not
but that's an issue, though.
right. But
Yeah.
they're not injuring.
Okay, duly noted.
Yeah.
Okay. Kim or Sophia, any further comments?
No, we're good.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to close public comment period and open it up for the board to discuss.
I'll speak.
Go ahead, Mary.
So I'd like to restate my objection and opposition to passing this ordinance prohibiting the use of the creek for tubing. I think, as the Scott family mentioned, there's an inherent danger in a lot of activities that everyone takes a part of, and that by itself should not prohibit tubing on the creek. I think we could address this, as we had briefly discussed before, opening up a certain stretch where we feel it is a little bit more safe for access, not utilizing private property to access, and having some of those issues. And if we're going to be posting signs, of course, it's at your own risk. I think the suggestions and the actions that these families took upon themselves already by requiring helmets, by requiring flotation devices, or safety devices other than maybe just the tubes, could be something that we could consider in passing the ordinance to allow tubing on a certain stretch of Clear Creek. As Sophia actually was talking, I thought we're closing the door. We could be tapping into such a great community resource here. If the tubers want to tube on a certain stretch of Clear Creek, why not at the appropriate time of year, we do the creek cleanup, which I know a lot of community residents have taken upon themselves over the stretch of time. And we're talking pretty much that same stretch there, where they could be taking out some of the more dangerous hazards of what's on the tube or what's on the creek for tubing, just as we encourage our ice racers, our Jeep racers, to come out and participate in our community cleanup, because they're using our lake and our parks and everything else. So here we've got the youth of the community, whether they're part-time residents or not, doesn't make any difference. But if we had some tubers out there and they really have a point to being in that creek, they're going to want it in the best condition possible. We don't use our creek enough, our waterways enough. I mean, we've all seen the activity on the lake this summer has increased at, I don't know, 5-fold, 10-fold more than that even. Yeah, that's what I would think too, Rob. And just to say no because, oh, you could get hurt. You can get hurt on the lake too. It doesn't cut it with me. And I applaud these families for coming out and tuning in and speaking up, because they gave me even more reason why I think we should reconsider this and pass an ordinance and allow them to do it. So thank you.
Thank you.
I kind of agree with Mary, because when I was reading this, I was thinking more of the south side of town, where it's going through all the private property. You got the wooden barriers, and it just looked super unsafe. I did not realize that there was a safe place to put in, and then it's a relatively short distance to the lagoon, if I'm getting this right. But if we could do this ordinance in such a way that you cannot access the creek from the south end of town to some point where it is safe, that's your entry point. And then I think we allow that part of the creek to be used. Those are my thoughts.
is there an easily identifiable endpoint that's further south that is accessed from town property?
How about 11th Street Bridge?
Yep.
11th Street Bridge, yeah.
Okay,
It's got that low spot with the county access. People go right up there into the creek with their dogs and putting their toes in anyway, you know, when the water is decent. It's a picnic little area by Mountain Buzz.
I'd be willing to, you know, have 11th Street Bridge be the southern terminus of that, and just also see how it goes. You know, if we start having problems, then we can change things.
yes, Kent.
Even if we would have a terminus at 11th Street Bridge, I would still say when it's high water or when conditions are extreme, that there could still be a limitation at that time.
Oh, absolutely. That would be like Golden when they shut down Clear Creek because it's, you know, the conditions are not safe for anything to go in there, much less you know. So
How about like the pass has a little flip down thing that says closed? You know, we could have that on the sign, something like that.
I like that.
Okay. Keith, yes.
So should we take it upon ourselves to have someone like go out and look at it, look for particular hazards that may be there, but not, truly visible to some people, just to make sure that there's nothing lurking in there that could be dangerous. And I'm not volunteering, but.
Like the Loch Ness Monster, but.
Well,
I
I
think
like,
pedophiles are underwater? Come on.
like a piece of angle iron sticking up or something.
They would have found it by now.
But some of that too could move with the different flow of the water. So I think if you identify a hazard today, it may not be there tomorrow, you know, or whatever. So I mean, I get it, but
more like things that may be attached to the bank, like obnoxious. Yeah, go ahead and laugh. Like
no, I'm not
like chunks of
laughing.
rebar, concrete, that kind of thing.
I know what you're suggesting.
John said he'd be happy to go out there.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, there is broken concrete from the 15th Street on, I think, in the channel that we should probably look at. Just make sure that it's, you know, safe. You know, like Keith says, no rebar sticking out of it. It looked like it was old drain pipe or something that was sewer pipe or something that had been crushed and whatnot. So just, I mean, we could just look at that, but.
Would our town crew be able to just do a sweep?
The one complication is that this runs over both public property and private property. So there'd have to be some coordination there. We could take a look. I don't know whether we'd have the capability to take different things out of the river, but I don't have an immediate answer for that.
Okay.
So the one place that I think that I've seen things in that spot is where I think we have access. We worked out with the property owner across the creek that we could put a trail, or that we reserve the right to have some access there for exchange for a road right of way use or something like that. That's where I'm thinking is the only thing I saw that was dangerous.
that's along that rickety split or whatever the heck trail that's called. Is that where you're talking, like opposite Cooper's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And I remember a meeting that we kind of secured that side, or at least it was conceptualized that we were going to get that side in exchange for use of the land on the other side that was a road right away. I can go back, I guess, and look.
So the property you're actually talking about is on the west side of the creek. Is that
Exactly.
correct?
East
Pardon?
side.
Exactly,
Okay.
along the road right there, and there's little
Okay.
tag ends of property that are part of the other property, you know.
Okay.
And it was, I do remember the hearing. I remember going over that. It was quite a long time ago, but
Okay.
Wasn't that when we improved that bridge there? The 15th Street Bridge? Was that in connection with that?
no, it was
No.
about a project that was being planned the other side of the Family Dollar.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. I remember it.
You remember that?
Mhm.
So anyway, I think we would be okay to look at it. I don't think it would be a deal killer. I don't remember, you know, really nasty things in there. I just think that it would, you know, benefit us to just kind of look.
Okay. I guess I would want it to be very clear that the town is only taking responsibility for any of that sweep of the creek on property that is public. I don't want to give the impression that we're making the channel safe the entire length, because that would encroach into private property. And the whole idea, as I see it, is if we are going to change the endpoint and allow some tubing, it still is at your own risk, unless we have actually closed it to tubing because of high water or other dangerous situations.
Or low water, you know, dangers.
So
Whatever. I agree with that.
okay.
Hey Jerry, if you're working in the open water type part of that law, is the base of that open water part of that, or how does that work, do you think?
The issue is, you know, navigable waters of the United States. And this case has come up in Colorado, rafters, tubers actually on the Colorado River in Grand County. And a rancher wanted to fence off his stretch of the Colorado River to tubing, and was determined that no, he didn't have the right to do that. But what we also learned from that, and I think it's really pertinent to the discussion the board's having, is that property owner owns the banks and likely owns the bed. You have the right as a tuber to be in the water. But when you touch the banks and when you touch the bed, you're on private property. Here, of course, for the creek, especially on the southern reaches, you're probably touching the banks and the bed quite a bit. And I guess I'd also mention what I mentioned earlier, which is the town already has a code section that requires private property owners to maintain the banks and to build things to contain the creek. So if I'm a private property owner and there's tubers going by and they're injured by my stuff, which I own because I own the banks and the bed, then it's on me from a liability standpoint. Now, the board doesn't have to think about that when it decides where to put in and take out points, but I think it's really relevant to your decision about that, such that you're not encouraging a lot of conflict around that. And I think where the board's headed is changing the put in point to be further north. I would also say on the business about a rescue, it isn't the issue that the landowners adjacent would not give permission to rescue. It's just that it's so enclosed, it'd be very difficult, forget permission, very difficult for the rescuers to get to people in those reaches of the creek. That's a real safety concern. It isn't anything to do with property owner's permission. Having said all that, I think it's probably good and fair for a number of reasons for the board to think about a different endpoint to reduce conflicts, but to permit tubing where it's safe. And that's your policy decision to make. The way the ordinance is structured, all you really would have to do would be to drop in a different point where it says nothing upstream of, and you'd be basically moving that point further north, as far as I can tell.
Moving.
Further
the
south, sorry.
point further south. Yes.
Further south, yeah.
Yes. Get our orientation right.
Yeah.
Do we
Thanks.
need to put in the provision that we would have the authority to close it off completely should conditions not be favorable and not safe enough to allow it anywhere?
I don't think so. I think that that's, and I'm happy to go check and talk to the marshal about that. But, you know, it's common for law enforcement to close public and private areas for public safety purposes. And I wouldn't have any trouble with the marshal entering some kind of order. We put up a bunch of signs that, you know, it's high water and there's no tubing now until the signs are down or something like that. Or if a given reach of that you're otherwise permitting for some reason is dangerous, we found a pipe sticking up and, you know, any of those reasons, I think you'd have authority to do that. I don't believe you need to incorporate that into the ordinance.
Okay. So what do we think? Is everybody in agreement with the, so rather than just say the 11th Street Bridge, so the banks to the north of the bridge?
That would make sense. So are we amending the ordinance in front of us? Are we not taking action on it and rewriting the ordinance? Are we suspending it, tabling it until we clarify this, or are we directing staff? I mean, I'm ready to make that motion. You just
Well,
tell me what we're,
I'm ready to make a suggestion.
go for it.
Oh, Jerry.
The ordinance is pretty simple already. So in looking at it, what you really have is unlawful to kayak, etc., on the Clear Creek channel and its forks upstream of the point. And it's really the rest of the ordinance is your basically your put in point. So if what you want to say is that it's upstream of a point immediately upstream of the 11th Street Bridge or downstream of the 11th Street Bridge, however you want. I'm hearing the 11th Street Bridge is safe to go under.
I think that's where we want them to put in, like just north of the 11th Street Bridge, for lack of a more specific spot as we do this check.
Just north of, meaning after the bridge?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
And then that's one less bridge that people would go under.
Yeah.
So that, again, decreases
Risk.
You could word it downstream of the 11th Street Bridge.
Yeah, and not including the bridge or whatever,
Yeah.
however, yeah.
Yeah, that,
Downstream and, yeah. blah,
but not including the 11th Street Bridge.
Yeah, you know, if you said within the territorial boundaries of the town upstream of the point immediately downstream of the 11th Street Bridge.
That sounds so confusing.
Honestly, I know, but it would do it.
And,
the other way,
and we confuse the public. Yes.
the other way to do it, if you're with me, would be
Can we put
to
a
say,
sign there that says enter here?
the other way to do it would be the language you have within the territorial boundaries of the stream at any point upstream of the 11th Street Bridge.
Downstream.
Downstream.
No, we're prohibiting it
the
any point
prohibition is
upstream.
Oh, I'm
Okay,
sorry. Did I
and so we're
misunderstand?
Doing the reverse.
We're allowing downstream.
Yeah.
See?
And I, you know, if you're really concerned about the safety of the 11th Street Bridge, we could say at any point upstream of the 11th Street Bridge, including that bridge, if you like. But, you know, I mean, that avoids the upstream, downstream concern. Or, you know.
You
could
just
make
don't
it
want them to
north and
have to go
south.
under the 11th Street Bridge.
Right,
It-
they have to be
Well-
passed.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so upstream of the 11th Street Bridge, we've got Gateway on one side, and the bank is steep there. The other bank, the east side bank, just upstream of the 11th Street Bridge is the parking lot at Fabe. And it is shallower, but that's a parking lot for a business.
Right.
And I think pulling it to the north side of the 11th Street Bridge gets it back into more public land and less private land conflict. Just my opinion.
So can we use that verbiage, north of the 11th Street
Yeah.
Bridge and upstream, north and, whatever? Because that makes it a lot more clear, even though we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, you could say within the territorial boundaries of the town, immediately north of, immediately south of the 11th Street Bridge and including the bridge.
Okay.
Because-
Which
sounds-
is where it's not allowed. Got it.
That's correct. I mean, it's all about the prohibition, not where it's allowed. You
Right.
can turn it around and say it's only allowed from below that bridge to the lake if you liked. Everywhere else it's prohibited, but right now the structure is the prohibition. And I think that works.
Okay.
You can put up some signs and pretty soon, and the signs will say no tubing upstream of this point. And that'll make it clear.
So are we considering putting, adding helmets and flotation devices in addition to the tube? Or are just at their own risk?
Personally, I think since we already require that for anybody who operates any kind of watercraft down in the lake and the lagoon, that there's no reason not to have, the helmet is different, but definitely life preservers. And I think for creeks and tubing, a helmet is advised.
Preferred, yeah.
If they get tossed off, they can bang their heads on a rock really easily.
I mean, I'm fine if we add helmets to it. I mean, I don't think I think it's a little bit more protection, but it doesn't take away from the enjoyment of your tubing adventure.
Okay.
And these kids and their families were like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. We'll do that. And then they said the next time they were prepared to do that. So, I mean, we've already got buy-in. It is a bumpy ride.
So we specify that this is just for tubes so that somebody doesn't float a 50-gallon oil drum down there.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I can agree with that, Keith. Because I could see, I hate to put ideas in people's heads, but I'm sure I'm not the first one to think this. I could see someone down the line trying to use a stand-up board and go down there because they just feel that that's more adventurous.
Or a homemade raft or.
Well, yeah.
Like
So,
that.
I mean, we could say tube and kind of leave the definition to, so.
Yeah, we could use a gas tank for that matter. But I think we need to limit it to tubing.
Okay, I can do that.
So,
I agree with that for the height consideration under the bridge too. The tubes are
Yeah.
lower.
Good point. Good point. I like that.
okay.
If you want to incorporate those into this, what the life preserver, et cetera, requirements are elsewhere in the code. They're not in this Clear Creek Channel section. I've been flipping through to try to find it. It's something we did not that long ago.
Right,
But
because it's posted at the lake, yeah.
I'd be able to do a better job of giving you an amendment here if you went on to other agenda items and laid this on the table while I figured that out. And if I can come to a point where I've good confidence that the amendment I'm suggesting does the right cross-reference or uses the right language, then great, we can just get it done. Failing that, I guess I'd probably ask you to continue it to the next meeting.
Okay.
But let me see if I can get it done here. I know we
Okay.
got people watching and they'd like to get some finality on it.
Sure.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, all right, we will hit the pause button on this item and go on to the short-term rentals. We were talking about a review committee to review the short-term rental program. And I think Kent has been coming up with some ideas on what that committee, who could be on the committee, should be on the committee, what they should address, so that there's some focus to the group. So.
Wow.
Yes, and this should have been included in your packets, but I was
It wasn't.
limited in my mind faculties last week when putting together the agenda packet. Jerry helped put this together. Basically a just quick review of the short-term rental program, and if I can make it go
Need to like
not quite that much.
scroll.
Okay. The current rental program was adopted in 16. It started in 17. It was amended slightly in 2018. The key limitation is there is no more than 7% in each ward. The current number of rental permits, Jen might have to substitute the number right here. And I didn't tell her that I was going to say that. So.
Yeah, I can tell you the number. It's 49.
Currently, we have 49 short-term rental permits, and we have waiting lists in Ward 1 and in Ward 3.
Right. And Ward 3 has 14 people. Ward 1 has 4 people.
Which is the most for Ward 1. That's the most since we started. Now, that does not include people who live on site. So the conditions on the short-term rental permits presently extend to the following. There must be an owner representative available at all times. There's trash issue. There's a parking plan. There's a life safety inspection that's required every single year, both on the initial and also on the renewal. And then there may be additional conditions imposed on the issued permit. And primarily it's regarding parking or occupancy limits. The permitting procedure is there's an application and then there's notice to property owners within 300 feet that comment, and then there's an issuance or denial by the town administrator, and then a second round of letters. We basically call it a first round of letters and then a second round of letters to the folks, letting them know whether it was approved and if it was with conditions. The review criteria, they got to make sure that they have their lodging and sales tax licenses. They also have a business license. They've also done the life safety inspection, and it complies with the 7% limit. But other than that, there's limited review on what it is. There's some things that could come up as far as the proximity of the proposed short-term rental to other previously issued short-term rentals. Potential impact of the rental on the neighborhood, which probably an example that would be more worthwhile than some others is we have one or two buildings of condominium units that there's quite a few within the condominium complex. And that's where potential impact on the neighborhood. The others, I don't know how you know about it ahead of time. And we saw that last meeting. You know, what is the impact to the neighborhood? There can be people for and against, and it's really a subjective criteria. The ability of the applicant, or parking, traffic, and pedestrian congestion and safety concerns. There could be review criteria with that. The ability of the applicant to comply with permit conditions. Making more, the general requirement that short-term rental permits are personal to the applicant, make it more explicit. So that some people don't realize that it's not transferable. And we've had a couple of conditions where either people selling the house is a little easier to say that it doesn't transfer when you sell the house, but it also could be within the family. We've had one or two situations of that come up where it was owned by one generation of family, it gets transferred to the next generation, but the license does not transfer. And then that the applicant, the license is basically on an annual basis. There's a renewal every year. And then it could be other concerns. There's a couple other things that, you know, the criteria for approval, I think some of these are in there, and the criteria for renewal. The other thing is the appeal process itself. There's probably, it is a little bit difficult regarding the appeal process. And that's something that should be considered by the committee. As far as what a committee, I think that the board should express what they'd want back from the committee. And also let the committee know that there's no guarantee that the recommendations will make it all the way. But I think if there's a member, I think when I was talking with Lynette, one thing that was brought up, the possibility was to have a board member from each ward be involved, a short-term rental owner involved, and then a regular resident or citizen who does not own a short-term rental owner. Because there is concerns both from the owners regarding the process as well as the neighbors in the neighborhood. And there are valid concerns, and spoken with a couple different board members on different concerns before the hearing that occurred on 300 Towers. Just in bringing up concerns of what it's about. I think there is benefits to the short-term rental program in that it allows some homes to be occupied at various times when they wouldn't be. But there's also concerns about numbers of short-term rental owners and the parking concerns in the neighborhood. And once it's approved, it is a difficult process to voice concerns that aren't like your regular neighbor concerns when a neighbor starts feuding with another neighbor. And so just the expectations that the board should give any committee, or if you think this is a good idea for a committee to overlook it, so that the board itself should just take a look at it. That's what I'm asking you for right now. Am I missing anything, Lynette, regarding
No,
previous conversation?
I think, well, and just consider whether the board wants to put a moratorium on further issuance until the recommendations come back from the committee, if we want to do it by committee, or if we want to do a work session with the board. Just do we want to stop issuing new licenses until everything's been thoroughly discussed and we've reached agreement on whether we're changing it and how we're changing it if we are.
There was one other thing that Jennifer and I discussed earlier today as far as, and I don't know if it's legal or not. I haven't asked Jerry and I haven't looked at other communities. Whether it'd be possible to put a time limit so that a person purchasing a property would have to own the property for a little bit of time before they could apply for a short-term rental permit. And that might address part of the concern where people buy a property for the express purpose, the only express purpose is as an investment property. And I think that's something that rankles people quite a bit when a house goes up for sale and is bought by someone, but then the only purpose of it is as an investment property.
And you could do that. A license like this is a privilege, not a right. And so long as you're not placing unconstitutional restrictions, race, sexual orientation, things like that, as long as you're not placing unconstitutional restrictions on eligible applicants, you've already placed restrictions when you think about it, 7% per ward, et cetera. That's fine. Going back to the point that a short-term rental license is a privilege, not a right. So your ability to impose restrictions is purely governed by sort of legislative, rational basis kinds of reasons, which is pretty broad, that address needs of the community and frankly, a year-long ownership requirement meets that test. It doesn't offend any category under the Constitution of protected classes. So you're fine with that. By the way, on a moratorium, you can enact that, and it's something you could enact that would freeze the acceptance, processing, and approval of short-term rental permits. It's done often for things like sexually oriented business ordinances where there's a concern of getting it in place right away. And you can do that by resolution. Okay. And that would be next meeting, or if you really want to do one, take a recess and let me draft it, and I could draft one for tonight if you really need it.
Do we have any pending applications? Or applications pending?
Just one at this
Yes.
time. So.
Okay.
Okay. In thinking about who should be on a committee like this, like Kent brought up, I think representatives of both communities should be able to participate, both the non-owners and the owners of STRs. It might be better actually if we did this as a board with just public participation of anybody who was interested, and that way you get a more broad input from the public, and we could do a work session, one or more work sessions to discuss it and hash it out if the board would want to. And that way, the public can still participate. It's just, yeah, it might be better that way. I don't know. Anybody have strong feelings about how this should be organized and proceed?
Well, I was part of the last one, and it kind of worked out well having the board, the whole board, because there was a lot of public comment, and I don't know, it's a big issue. I mean, people get really involved in this, and you know, if we can figure out how to do it quickly, I guess I would be all right with a work session and then public involvement.
Okay. Keith?
I would like to suggest that we do a moratorium until we do get this worked out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Mary.
What if we do a combination of both? I like the transparency of the board members, a member from each ward representing the short-term rentals, and then a member of each ward representing the, you know, permanent residents or non-short-term rental owners. But that could follow, I mean, I hate to belabor it, but it would still give everyone a voice if we had a work session where we're accepting public comment, take all of that, and then with that committee of 9, which I am most would like to be a part of, you know, then we could kind of crunch through all of that information that we got from the work session or work sessions, and then come back. And I would feel comfortable too with a moratorium, as Keith and John are suggesting.
Okay. I'm seeing Rob nod. But how do you feel about it, Paul?
Mike, I think the entire board should be involved with the work session. We don't need another little committee in town to start to micromanage some things, but if we're all involved with a work session open to the public, it gives the chance for the public to voice their opinion. It's a lot easier for all of us to handle a large public presence versus a smaller committee. As far as a moratorium, it doesn't make a difference if we have a waiting list on 2 of the 3 wards anyway. I mean, how do they get off the waiting list? Does somebody have to give up their license to get on there? Okay.
Yes.
I don't know, a kind of moratorium kind of tells the public we're taking this seriously too.
Yeah.
One way to look at it.
Yeah, and in case somebody would surrender a license, one wouldn't slip in until we had things ironed out.
Okay.
That's right.
So, any other thoughts? What I'm hearing people say is they would like to do a, go ahead, Rob.
I'm sorry, I just had I'm Johnny come lately, but
All right.
boy, this issue takes the unity out of community. Holy mackerel. You know, it's like I would venture to say that I've never seen people so, it brings out the worst in people. It really does.
I would say they have strong thoughts about it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the very next door neighbor for this guy, Shane, I'm under the impression that they hid from him, you know, and it would, maybe I'm taking an isolated situation, but it's kind of like the age old adage. Hey, the last time you tried to please everybody, how'd that go?
Yeah. I guess I would say, just as a Ward 2 resident, I have not experienced the same kinds of conflicts and difficulties that the other 2 wards have. Until recently, I had 2 right in the same block with me, one just down the street, just 2 doors down, and then one around the corner. And you wouldn't know it. You'd never know it. People are coming and going and enjoying town. And the only way I could tell it was the family and not a short-term rental was the different car that I recognized. So, but that doesn't say that Ward 1 and Ward 3 haven't had conflicts that made it difficult to live with them in close proximity.
Well, you've got, you know, I did notice, or I didn't realize, but, you know, Shane would be an SRT right across the street from Karen Wilson, who's also an SRT. It just seems like they're in our ward, they seem to be tighter, but that might be a function of its age and layout.
I think this is a good example of, we need to have a work session. We need to look at each ward, and the wards need to be represented by their representatives. And I think we should put a moratorium on, and we should move quickly on this.
Yep.
Okay. So, given that everybody seems to be in agreement on both the moratorium and a work session, which, if I'm reading the sentiments correctly, a work session with the board that the public can participate in as they wish. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, do we want to do?
You're going to control public comment, right? I mean, we're not just,
Oh, yeah.
it's just not a free for all or anything.
Sure. It'll be a work session with, yes. Yeah. So, is there any reason why we can't, go ahead, Kent. I was just going to ask if we wanted to do those two issues in separate resolutions or motions.
Probably could. I have one is that Tom wanted to speak on this issue.
Oh, okay.
And I kind of neglected him at the front.
Sorry. Yep.
But, or to remind you of that.
I'm promoting him.
Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Tom, thank you.
Okay, I'll be brief because I like what the discussion has said. I have several specific suggestions, but I'm going to hold off on going through all those until you decide whether you're going to, who's going to be on the committee, or if the board is going to handle it. I'll have some input then. I'll just make a couple of suggestions. One, I really do think the $120 fee that's charged people to file objections or comments is way too high. I've read this ordinance, and I think there's an overlapping of the 15 days that you give the neighbors to object is the same, as the way I read it, the same 15 days that the town administrator has to act upon the application. And a reading of 528.040D, I've read it, and it's the same. Now, I'm sure Kent waits. I'm sure, Kent, that you do wait until you receive those objections, but under the ordinance, you don't have to. And I think that needs to be corrected. And then I suggested, I think that appeal last week of 300 Taos, I mean, at the end of that hearing, I would have voted to approve him. And I think everybody else would have too, as it was unanimous from the board. That kind of a meeting can be avoided if there's an unrecorded meeting moderated by Kent between the neighbors and the applicant. I think that would straighten a lot of this out. They talk to each other, they can be heard. And I know I've met Shane twice now. He's a very nice individual. I know the neighbors next door, they are very nice individuals. They just never came together and didn't have the opportunity. And I think that you could avoid an appeal to the board by having this discussion ahead of time. I'll save my other comments until later, but I really am in favor of you reviewing this situation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Thanks very much. Okay, so.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
And it really is to Keith. I'm kind of interested in what you have to say. Do you guys live around some SRTs?
STRs.
STRs?
SRT is a Dodge.
That's it.
We have certainly in the past had issues The house next to us was, on the corner, was an absolute disaster when it was a short-term rental. It was not an official short-term rental, as they had no license, but that's what they were doing with it.
What
And
was some of the things that made it a disaster?
noise, smoking pot on the front porch.
You did that.
You know,
Actually, those things were all discussed when we first put the ordinance together.
right.
So I guess I'd prefer not to get into all of the weeds on the nitty gritty on what the issues have been in this particular meeting. What I'd like to resolve here is just who should be, should it be a committee? Should it be the board? Should we put a moratorium in place until the review can happen and the board can come to a resolution? Because it is, once we start getting into the weeds on the problems, we don't stop, and it's not what I'd prefer to accomplish this evening. So
Sorry.
that's okay. That's all right. Curiosity. Yes,
How
John.
about we do the moratorium
Yep.
first, and then I'm in favor of the full board with a work session.
Thanks, Sally.
Okay. So is it one motion too?
If you would like me to make a motion, I would make a motion to create a moratorium on short-term rentals until we've had a new ruling, I guess, or what would it be called? Another
Amendment.
Would it be better to do it for a specific number of months, and then we can extend the moratorium if we haven't finished?
Okay, so how about we say 6 months? That we put a moratorium of 6 months on with, if we have a need for extending it, we can.
And we can also rescind it if the issues have been resolved, and so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, 6 months. Is
If-
there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to impose a moratorium for 6 months on issuing new licenses, and
Jerry's got a point.
yes, both Jerry and Kent have their hands up. So Kent, go ahead.
My only question is that for new applications, or we have one current one? He's been dinking around with it for about a year, and it's one where he lives in the residence, so, but he's in the process. So is he included in the moratorium, or is it any just new application?
So what he's asking for is, still needs a license, but it doesn't add to the
Right.
limited numbers because he lives in the residence. So if that makes a difference.
I think anything that's asking for a license, I think we should just have the moratorium on it right now and just work really quick.
Okay.
Can I just ask for clarification? So if we took the entire 6 months to work through this, that would obviously go into 2021, and that would go into the relicensing period, which we would not want to continue with if we're still trying to eke these things out. So it's not just for new, I mean, if we go the 6 months, it's not just for new applicants, it would be new and renewals.
Yeah, I would be asking you guys to finish by the end of the year. So,
Well, and we should,
yeah.
but I just
Yeah,
want to throw that out there because,
I was gonna ask, isn't 6 months kind of a long time?
yeah, it's too long.
Yeah,
I mean, we can't drag this out. You know, we've heard from our community, and we certainly.
and 6 months is dragging it out.
Yeah, so
Okay. I was thinking more in terms of either 2 months or 3 months as a
Two,
time
three.
frame.
Two to three, I could live with, yeah.
What do
Okay.
we make
Fine.
it? Three?
Does
Make
that,
it, yeah,
does
fine.
that
We can
work?
make it three months. If we need an extension, we'll just put an extension on it. If that makes everybody happy. Sorry.
Okay. And Jerry had something to add too.
If you want to do this by resolution, I've been furiously writing one. Because I've done numbers of these kinds of resolutions before. They follow kind of a pattern. But it needs to tell a little bit of a story, make some findings why you're kind of freezing people out of the process a little bit. Am I right in thinking that you want to capture new applications, but applications that are pending may be processed? Is that what I heard? Because that's one thing.
That was one of the questions, and I'm okay with either one. I think it's better to have it apply to new applications rather than anything that's already in process. But
that's a little more fair, because
Mhm.
that way people that have relied on what your code says can rely on it, and the
Mhm.
people that haven't yet relied have the resolution to know that they can't. That's a way of approaching it, I think. Well, sorry, with you, I can rattle off a resolution. Somebody can say so moved, and then you can tinker with changes to it, but at least we can get the resolution down. It's not really lengthy.
Okay, is that all right, John?
Is that all right?
Yeah, rattle away.
Okay. So it'd be resolution number, what's the next number, Jennifer?
Number 8.
Number 8.
Number 8.
Okay, so it'd be resolution number 8, series 2020. Whereas the town of Georgetown is a territorial charter municipality, which is governed by a elected board of selectmen. And whereas the board of selectmen has previously enacted chapter 5.28 of the Georgetown Municipal Code concerning short-term rental of residential structures. And whereas the board of selectmen finds that the short-term rental licensing system under that chapter is in need of review and revision. And whereas the board of selectmen finds that a board-led community discussion of the short-term rental program is needed to develop the needed revisions. And whereas the board of selectmen finds that a moratorium on the approval of the further acceptance, processing, and approval of short-term rental licenses is needed to allow this process to take place. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Selectmen, Section 1. The Board of Selectmen hereby imposes a moratorium on the acceptance of new applications and acceptance and processing and approval of new applications for short-term rental licenses under Chapter 5.28 of the Georgetown Municipal Code, pardon me. Section 2, this moratorium shall extend for 3 months from the date hereof unless earlier terminated or extended by the action of the board. Section 3, effective date, this resolution shall take effect upon adoption.
So moved.
So what did I miss in there?
I don't think you missed anything.
Yeah, you're way better than me.
Gary, aren't you hot?
So John made the motion and Keith seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, very good. And then organizationally, I think I don't see that we really need a motion, but if you want to make one that sets out that it'll be the whole board as a work session with public involvement, is that something we want to do?
Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted to make a note. You know, we actually do have in our town somebody who does work for Zoom.
I know, I just read
Yes, I
that.
see that.
Okay, good. I just didn't know if anybody had seen that. Is that something that we want to take advantage of?
Well, our work session's going to be on Zoom, so yeah.
She's saying that she could divide the meeting up into different rooms.
Okay,
Breakout
think-
rooms.
But you know what, we can all, something that comes up in Ward 1 might apply to Ward 3 and 2 and 3, and I'd rather, though it might be a free-for-all, I'd rather hear everybody than have it limited, though I do appreciate her offer for assistance.
I do
Right
too,
on.
yeah.
No,
So-
it's just, you know, she's an amazing resource that we really don't tap into. Not that we need to, but you know, I know some things that we don't.
Knowledge is good.
Yes, it is. Yes.
I
it
have
is.
a quick question.
Yes, Jen.
If somebody calls and wanted to put their name on the wait list, what would I say during this moratorium? Would I say, we have a moratorium, I can't do it? Or would I just add them to the waiting list?
As drafted, and the board can tinker with this a little bit, but as drafted, on the waiting list isn't the acceptance of an application. You're just on the waiting list, and when a spot opens up, then you can drop in an application. So I think people could still go on the waiting list. Good question.
Okay.
Though.
Thank you.
Know
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would think so too. Kent, did you have something? Yes.
I guess as far as timing, do you want to have this on a separate night or on the same night as the regular meeting? I'm not begging for another meeting, but it
Really?
probably would be good.
I'd like to not have it on the work sessions for the financials somehow, so we aren't there forever.
Could we start it an hour early? And then that way it's only from say 5 to 6 before a board meeting. And then if we have to schedule another one to hear everybody or whatever, or put some time limits on it. So if someone doesn't have 5 minutes to talk kind of thing, so that we could get through it. Because otherwise we could be here till midnight.
Right.
Yep.
Why would we have it on a separate night?
So we weren't really due to start budget work sessions until October 27th.
Oh, joy.
So we could, why don't we, if it's okay with everybody, we could do a work session prior to the next board meeting, say an hour's worth, and see where we get.
Does that give, well, one, Kent, I would appreciate it if you could email that out, that memo that you put together, if you would email that out to us all, because you do capture some points there. Is there any other information that we might be asking at this point from town staff that we would want prior to that work session? Just, you know, just some data that they're going to need a little bit more time to put together.
Yeah.
I don't want to rush them either.
Keith.
Or what else is on your plate?
I would welcome any ideas, any suggestions they have based on their experience in dealing with this issue.
Okay.
Do you have enough time, Kent?
Yeah, I think it's really a matter of facilitating the meeting as you're trying to put those categories together so the discussion is focused, but allow everybody to speak and realize that the program's going to continue, but we need probably some additional criteria involved in different parts of the process. That's the goal of the committee. And I don't think, I think it would be good to have the first meeting, have this basic memo and the code itself as background, and then try to facilitate the meeting as best as possible and have it on a separate night than the regular meeting. I think that would be easier mentally.
Probably.
although it's another night, but, and also to limit it, that we don't go until midnight. It's an hour or 2 hours at a time.
Right.
Take it as a chunk, and then we can always have another work session, if that would be okay with the board.
I like that.
I do too.
Would there be any benefit for us to see the names on the wait list? Because some of these people may have a very active interest in participating in this work session.
They're open to.
I guess I'm not sure why we would, I mean, chances are they're going to identify what their interest is. You know, they're either an active license holder, or they're waiting for one, or they're just a concerned, interested citizen, or they're us on the board. So I'm not sure if we need to know. Most people will identify themselves.
Are we doing any?
I'm more curious to see this waiting list. Are they locals? Are they some of these investors that we were concerned about?
I don't think we should know that. They're property owners.
At this point, they have a stake in it. But are we going to notify, are we going to make any separate notification other than just putting on that we're having a work session for this? Are we sending out a letter to any of the current STR
I think we
license
need
holders?
to email make a separate communication, maybe not separate, but specific contact to all the short-term rental owners and the ones on the waiting list to say that this is occurring. And then as far as the general public or the town, we put it in the weekly email and do our regular notification of posting. This is a work session, discuss this.
Do we have a preference for a night of the week? Is maybe the third, would the third Tuesday, well, that's coming
I
up,
can't.
that's too early.
I could do the 4th. 4ths are often open if there's any.
Fourth Tuesday's already on for us.
Oh, that's right. Let's see.
That's us.
What about September 1st?
Wednesdays are good, other than the fire board you guys put me on.
No, Wednesdays aren't good.
Oh, we took you off that.
Please.
What about September 1st?
September 1st. What's that? What day is that?
It's a Tuesday.
And I'm a fan.
The first Tuesday? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, Labor Day weekend isn't until several days later, so it's before
Yeah.
the holiday weekend.
The next
I never take holidays.
Okay, I'm good for
Okay.
September 1.
Sounds like it'll work for everyone, so.
Yeah,
That's
Tuesday
great.
will work for me because we're in a routine meeting on a Tuesday anyway. It's just an off week.
Okay. All right, appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so if we've resolved that issue, are you ready for us to go back to ordinance number 3, Jerry?
Yes, I am.
All right, let's journey back to ordinance number 3.
As the way I've characterized it, it's 2 sentences. The first is the prohibition and sort of where the end put in takeout point is. The second sentence is business about personal flotation devices. And happily, we do have a chapter on safety restrictions for Georgetown Lake, which is over in Title 8. One of these days, I'm going to collect all of the Georgetown Lake requirements into one place because they're scattered, but we won't do that tonight. But I went to that, and you might recall that was adopted in 2016, so not that long ago. And some board members will recall that we defined what watercraft is, and said your equipment had to be in good order. Those rules are too complex and more than you want or need for this tubing issue, but it does contain a definition of personal flotation device. And I'm inclined to just either cross-reference that or repeat it in the Clear Creek channel section. I think I'd be inclined to repeat it because then people only have to look in one place. And I'll tell you what it says. It defines personal flotation device as a U.S. Coast Guard approved personal flotation device that is intended to be worn, otherwise attached to the body of personal flotation device labeled or marked as type 1, 2, 3, or 5 with a type 1, 2, or 3 performance is considered a personal flotation device. And I didn't invent any of that. That was the marshal that said, this is the language I want. This is how I know to identify stuff. And when they have it on, I can look at this. So I'm telling you that. But that's what that would say. So I guess that makes it 3 sentences. And if you're okay, I'll read what I think the ordinance, the operative section 1 of the ordinance would read. Something like this. It is unlawful for any person to swim, kayak, boat, or tube in or on the Clear Creek Channel and its forks within the territorial boundaries of the town upstream of the north parentheses downstream close paren side of the 11th Street Bridge, period. Okay. So if you don't know where north is, or you know what's upstream and downstream. If you're a tuber, you really know what's upstream and downstream. That's sentence 1. Sentence 2 would be persons choosing to swim, kayak, boat, or tube in the Clear Creek Channel north paren downstream of this point are required to wear a personal flotation device defined as follows, colon, and then I'd plug in the definition that I read you. So that's how you could do it.
And protective headgear.
Oh, okay. Was that, I heard sort of a difference of opinion on that. No?
I think we go with it.
Keep the helmet. Put the helmet on.
Yeah. I agree with it. You ought to include a head protection.
Okay, I'll just add protective headgear before I get into the definition of personal flotation device.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, that's adopting ordinance number 3 with the changes as read. She says yes.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
So,
Okay.
So one thing.
Okay.
Personal flotation device. Are we talking that's a life jacket or what they're tubing on?
It is what the definition applies to life jackets.
Okay.
That it's an
Yes.
inner tube is not a Coast Guard approved flotation device.
That's
So
exactly
certain
right.
Not
classifications.
their body. Jerry read the definition.
Right, I got that, but shall we define a tube as a tube as
No.
far as something you would be riding down the creek as opposed to John Jennings' 1950 Hudson gas tank that he might decide to take down the creek?
I'd let you use it.
I think you can take a fair amount of comfort in the phraseology of kayak, boat, or tube. And honestly, you know, in kind of an operative sense, if I'm Randy, I don't have any trouble applying that, I don't think.
I think Jerry's smarter than Keith.
Jerry doesn't have
So
I'm trying to keep my dog from talking here. It's tough.
she has things to say. So it's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 3, series 2020 on second reading with the amendments as read. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all.
And I'm sorry, I didn't catch who made the second.
I think it was Rob.
Who
Yeah,
seconded
Rob
it?
did. Rob,
Rob, okay, thank you.
that guy.
Okay. All right. Moving on, we have in your packets, you had July financial statements. And it was specifically requested by a member of the public. In fact, our Corinne Westerman from The Current to address the sales tax revenue. So Mary, would you like to talk about the sales tax report?
Well, we are over 10,000 up from 2019, but you'll notice that delinquent accounts account for over 10,000 of that. So we are about even with what was collected so far in 20 as 19. You know, our saving grace has been the mail order sales tax collection, and you know, home occupations just that's I believe it was 32,000 on this report, and this is as of June.
Correct.
So, or 31,000, I guess it was. But you know, numbers for south and north of 10th are both down, but again, the mail order, home, and other businesses is up is 29 over 29% versus 13% last year. So yes, our brick and mortar stores and restaurants are not up to where they were last year, but that's offset by the mail order. And I think there was a dip, I believe, let's see, back in March. And that was because there was a lot of people that did not report. And now that has caught up in June quite a bit. Like I said, over 10,000.
Okay, thank you, Mary. As Mary pointed out, the brick and mortar are experiencing a little bit less, but I would say not as significant. It's more like 6%, 7% reduction in their sales tax revenues over last year. So any other comments or questions? Let's start with Kent.
I would say that would be 6 or 7% in June. That's
Correct.
less for the brick and mortar.
Correct.
Not for the year, because
Right.
they've had more severe months before that.
True, true.
And it is affecting both south of 10th and north of 10th, even though
both.
It does seem the roundabout and the areas on Argentine are just as busy as last summer, it seems like, but their sales are still a little bit down.
Okay.
But our sales tax overall is even, or it's not way below expectations like we thought in March and April that it would be for the year. And one thing I would point out is I'd like to bring to the board at next meeting. We put off one of the projects we had in the budget for this year was to move forward with the Strauss Park project and at least get the construction, the plans for the construction to be done. That will be a significant expenditure, but I think the sales tax is holding up so that we can go ahead with that and at least get that done during 2020. We won't be, and then get the final questions resolved at the DRC, but they have to have the construction plans first before they can make those decisions. So I'd like to get that done during 2020, so then we could be set up to do something in 2021. And it won't use all of the park sales tax, but I don't think we're in danger now of having, I mean, things could still fall apart, I mean, it could still have a pretty hard fall. But I think we're at a point now that we will have enough funds to be able to fund that project, and I'd like to present that to you next time for approval. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
I'd like to see it go forward.
I don't want to do doomsday here, but with everything that has occurred since COVID and businesses and schools and probably parks and everything else are looking at perhaps a different way of approaching things for the future, well into the future, would there, and I doubt that anyone can put their finger on what that is yet, as far as a design, would it be worth some consideration to consider that possibility before we go ahead with a design that may not float next
I
year,
think,
5 years from now, 10 years from now?
I think it's worth a discussion with the designers, as far as, I don't see anything immediately that would prohibit what's been designed so far, but it's worth a discussion to be part of that.
I think it's important to look at. We're going to see a return to shortly, and I think possibly some fallout from that. And
I'd like us to consider it, or I'd like their recommendations on what they're hearing within their industry. And,
Sure.
and so that we're aware of what's being said. So just throwing that out there.
Okay. All right. Yes, John.
I just had a question about the park sales tax, use tax. Why is it different than the other sales taxes, use taxes? Is there, I mean, it's 36%, the other ones are 51. Am I just missing something here? Or? I don't get it.
Do you want me to explain?
Please, Mary.
I'd love you to explain.
Okay, so last year, we had a limit as to how much we could collect for parks because we had to state an amount. We went over that amount. So $30,000+ was refunded to taxpayers through their water bills, I believe in either May or June, I can't remember. That's part of it. And then the amounts are different because parks is getting part of the use tax where road and bridge is not, the way that the ordinances were written. So the base is different of where it's coming from. Parks has more. So a couple things that are different. One is taking away because we had to reduce this year's parks revenues for the sales tax by the 30,000+ because we over collected last year of what we were limited to. Now there's no limitation on this year, but we had to refund that. And it
So
all went.
It was the Tabor portion.
Yes. It was what was in excess of the Tabor prediction. Sure. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
So what's going on with building permits and other permits? Because we're at 125% and 249%. Is there just something, more activity that we anticipated?
Well, the apartment buildings get included on the building permits, and those are big numbers. So they kind of skew it whenever they come in. So.
Okay. And what's included under other permits?
A variety of things.
Thus the name other.
Yes.
Sign permits are included in there.
Excavation permits.
Well, that has a separate line item, but
amplified sound and
correct.
Cool.
Permits for everybody that lives on Taos, you know, those type of things. So just kidding, Paul.
I had a question about the severance tax. This is on page 3. Are we expecting more than what has been received so far, or is that going to be it for the year?
I do believe that is going to be it for the year. We finally hit where they said, okay, I think they told me 8 years ago, it's going to drop, it's going to drop. Well, it dropped this year.
Okay.
So.
All right. Any other questions for Mary or Kent? Then thank you very much. So the next are staff items. First one is COVID-19 emergency order update. Anything to add?
We purchased some signs that will be going up that regarding the 6th Street closure. There'll be some different signs that will be going up, letting people know that business is still open downtown. They'll be in a couple different locations, and then also some different signs for you know, keeping away from, you know, the social distancing, the masks, all those type of things. So, with more visual items on them. So those will be going up here within the next few days. We're still working with the businesses downtown to add things, and working also with the fire department to keep a lane clear on 6th Street. We're working with Luchas regarding liquor license issues, and that's about it.
Okay. I'd like to also bring up the CARES Act group that Kent and I have been participating in are getting very close to being ready to put out a application form for businesses to be able to apply for some grant monies. And so hopefully relief is in closer reach than it has been. So that's expected. The application forms should be out very shortly, and then the application process will continue, and then hopefully by, I believe, the deadline that we last discussed for actually issuing checks for these grants would be no later than September 30th. And then there will be a second round of CARES Act funding, relief funds for businesses. We're also starting to talk about individual relief funding, that they're going to be sending out surveys and trying to assess needs. Do people need assistance with rent, mortgage, utilities, childcare? The list goes on. So just so you know, it's ongoing there. Okay, then we have the census update, and as of the last report that I got from Ulla Karen Johnson, Georgetown has a self-reporting level of 51.3% of its 2019 estimated population. Clear Creek County is at 56.3. The other 3 towns are reporting at a higher rate than Georgetown is. We'd kind of like to bump that. So if anybody has ideas on how to get people to continue to self-report, as you probably know, the knocking up, going door to door and trying to help people in person has started as of last Thursday and will go on. I did just read an article in the Denver Post end of last week that the deadline, which had been set for ending the census reporting at October 31st, is going to be probably pulled back to September 30th, unless it changes again. And from what I'm understanding, it's been changing a lot. So I'm hopeful that they will go back to the October 31st that they originally told people. But that's where we are. So Matt Taylor is the head of the GIS department here at the county, and he's been on that census committee from the start. And he wondered if we wanted to do any kind of contest between the towns to see who could out report the other, at least by percentages. Just throwing that out there, because it's going to make a big difference if we don't get everybody counted. Mary asked about whether it had, the lower percentage had anything to do with part-time owners, and I think our population isn't counted unless you are actually considering yourself a resident, and so I'm not sure how that works. I can definitely look into it. Any comments, suggestions, ideas?
What are you guys finding out when you contact them, why they have not filled out a census? I mean, what's the pushback that we're seeing that only 50% of our population is willing to do this?
I don't know. I will ask that question.
The responses from previous census was that they didn't want to be identified for other federal, or they thought there would be consequences to filling out the census. But I don't know if that's the same sort of answer that they're giving now, why there's such a lower response rate.
Yes, Rob.
So, you know, one of the things that I do is lead and copper testing, and we have a hard time getting those bottles back from people. This is just a suggestion, throwing it out there. But we've had in districts that are a little more difficult than others, we've tempted the homeowner with gift cards. And I'm saying like maybe a gift card at Subway or a gift card, something like that. But that's just an idea.
Taco Tuesday.
I'm not sure about the ethics on trying to encourage with some kind of reward other than civic duty.
Or we give them cash.
I'd rather have copper.
I don't think so. I think cash falls into the same kind of suspect practice. So any other questions you want me to go find out and bring back to the board? Okay. According to the Census Committee, the variable message signs that we have here in town and what Idaho Springs have improved the response rate. So I also threw out the idea, and maybe we expand it in other ways, but if for the next mountain jam that happens, if the census workers could set up a little station that People can easily report right there. They'll have a tablet or a laptop and they'll have the QR codes, and hopefully that might make it easy for somebody who just keeps slipping their mind. So. Okay, did anybody have anything else?
So are we gonna still have the slacker?
Oh, it's long since been canceled. It's always the last Saturday in June, and that got canceled pretty early on.
Norma apparently received something regarding a amplified sound permit.
Oh, Mountain Jams, I think.
It was probably Mountain Jams.
Okay.
That, or it's also for the grand opening at the Abrahamsons, 3 new businesses on 6th Street.
Okay.
Next, this Saturday, they're having a grand opening celebration.
That could be it.
Have you guys heard about it? Yeah.
I did. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So.
Get any feedback from the county when you shared the information from our last special meeting? Was there any kind of a response from them regarding whether that money might be
not specific to the reimbursement, no.
Okay. Or any other information?
Nope.
Okay.
They're just carrying on.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, Kent, you had something else?
Just 2 minor things to mention. We are receiving bids Thursday for the Taos Water Main project and 15th Street Sewer. We'll see how that goes. That'll be presented at the next meeting. The park board is having a cleanup day at Greenway Park this Saturday.
Okay.
And they're going to mulch quite a bit of the slash that is there at Greenway Park, or that's the attempt, and then also moving some dirt over to fill in the paths that are through Greenway Park there. And that's it. So.
Okay. All right. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. It is 8:13 p.m. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Motion passes. Thank you very much, everyone.
Aye. Good night,
Night.
John.
Thank
Good night,
you.
Mary.
Good night, everybody.
Enjoy.
Paul, Keith.